Hello, I'm Melissa Castellanos with Halo Creative Designs. Today we're going to make a Jack Skellington Halloween wreath. You can find some of the items that I use in this video in the description down below. To get started, we need to prepare our frame. I have a roll of tinsel rope. It is the same tinsel that comes on pre-made forms. This project requires extra ties on the frame, so we're going to cut 12-inch strips of this tinsel rope so we can add some ties. The frame needs 18 total ties, 6 down each side and 6 down the center. So as you see here, I'm going to start adding down the center row. I do believe you have to add a total of 7 ties, 6 down the center row, and then 1, I think, in the bottom corner. The next step is to add our base. We're going to use this roll of 21-inch high metallic wide foil Deco mesh. We gather a little tail on the end, and then we will locate a tie on the very bottom, a corner. Lay that tail in, pull your stems opposite each other firmly to secure the mesh to the frame. You will put that tie on your start mark, measure out to 12 and gather. Then where you gathered, lay that into your next available tinsel tie and fluff your poof. We will repeat this step all the way around the frame. Gather, lay it into the next tie on your frame. And we measured out a 12-inch poof. We will use 12-inch poofs for the whole base. Make sure to pull your ties to the top. They can get lost in the sea of mesh, and since they match the mesh that we're using, they can be lost easily. So bring them to the top so you can see them and get to them quickly and easily. Now, as you see, we've made it to the end of the one side. Now we have to connect the two sides. So you measure out another 12-inch poof, and you're going to connect each side, the right side to the left side. Lay that poof in on your other side and tie it to secure it to the frame. As we've done on the other side, we went down this side with 12-inch poofs. You put your tinsel tie on your start mark. You measure down to 12, gather, and where you gathered, lay that into your next tinsel tie. Now this one, because we have to connect the two sides, we opened the tie we started on, and we laid this poof in on top and secured the ties. Now we're going to add the third row down the center. We're going to continue with 12-inch poofs till we complete the base. We're on our last poof down the center. This makes our 18th. And it will be the last one. Then we will have to cut the mesh from the frame. Now that your base is done, cut your mesh close to the tinsel tie to release your roll. You will have a good portion of your roll left so that you can repurpose for another project. Now I'm going to cut the netting. This is Saxon netting. It is 20 inches wide, and we're going to cut a 36-inch strip. Then we're going to cut that 36-inch strip into 3.5-inch sections. It works out to be about 4 blocks, 4 squares wide. So if you cut past the 4th square in the middle, you will get about 3.5 inches. So again, we're going to cut that 36-inch strip into individual 3.5-inch strips. Now we're going to cut this 10-inch black and white snowball mesh into cuts of 15 inches. You're going to need 18. We're going to do the curl or spiral method. You want to follow the natural curling pattern of the mesh and roll into it. Roll a nice tight roll, even tight roll, to form your curl. You're going to gather it in the center, kind of just squish it between your thumb and forefingers. And where you gathered, you're going to place that into your tinsel tie on your frame to secure it. And you'll do this for all 18 ties. Again, you follow the natural curve of your mesh, roll it into a tight curl, gather in the center between your thumb and fingers, and then where you gathered is where you will place into your next tie and twist the ties to secure it to the frame. Now we're going to work with the netting again. Take the strips that you previously cut and cut them in half. So they were 36 inches, now you're going to cut them in half. Find the center and gather it. You're going to find a twist tie and put it in. I added, I believe, 9 of these pieces. We'll count as we go, randomly throughout the design. Mostly the one right there on top, and then I filled in on the side. There's going to be a lot of embellishments down the center, so I didn't need a whole bunch of it in the center. So just continue around your frame, adding the netting. The next thing we need to do is prepare our signs. We're going to apply cable tie mounts is what I call them. I think they're electrical mounts to the back. And then we reinforce them with some E6000 epoxy. We want to make sure that these mounts are going to stay on in the extreme weather conditions. We don't know where our wreaths will go when they sell, so we want to make sure that we're covered. Just cover the perimeter with a good healthy dose of E6000. Make sure it touches the sign and the top of the mount so you get a good surface area coverage. And you'll do this for both signs. Once you have finished prepping your signs, just set them to the side and let them dry for a little while. We'll need them for our design in a bit. Now it's time to add Jack to the frame. Decide where he's going to be placed in your design. Look at where he will attach to the wreath on your frame. That's where you're going to put a hole. So pinch a good bit of fabric, take an ice pick, poke a hole all the way through, then run a pipe cleaner through that same hole and twist the pipe cleaner once to secure it. It's going to give you your first anchor point. You're going to then create a second anchor point a little further down. Same process, poke a hole with your ice pick, run your pipe cleaner through, give it a twist. Now you've got 2 anchor points to secure them to the frame by. Now we're going to cut 9 pieces of this frayed edge burlap. It's a 10-inch roll of frayed edge burlap mesh. We're cutting it in 15-inch strips, and we're going to place 9 pieces around the perimeter of this design. We did the ruffle technique, so you place it on your table curved side down, locate the center with your thumb and forefingers, gather it to form a bow tie shape, and at that gather is where you will place it into your twist tie. Lay it curved side down, gather in the center, then place it into your twist tie. This is called the ruffle technique. Next, we're going to make our first bow. It is our biggest bow. It's our focal bow. We're going to measure a 10-inch tail and gather. Put that gather on your start mark. Measure out a 13-inch loop. Bring them together and gather. Twist your pretty side up. Measure another 13 inches, bring it to the back and gather, and twist that pretty side up again. Then you're going to measure out, I actually checked the placement of my bow and the size before I finished making the bow. I wanted to make sure before I went any further that my loops were big enough for my design. So then we added 2 more loops to make this a 4-loop bow. Our loops are 13 inches. So measure out 13 inches, bring it to the back, and gather it in with the rest. Then twist your pretty side up and cut a 10-inch tail to match your other side. Because it hurts my hands to hold and make a complete bow, I do a piece bow using the bow dabra to hold my pieces as I go. So I lay these 4 loops and 2 tail bow that I just made into the bow dabra, and I go ahead and take the time to straighten the bow. This will help at the end when you're fluffing the bow. If you've already done most of the placement and the fixing at this point, it'll save you a lot of grief later. We're moving on to the second ribbon in our bow. This is also a 2.5 inch. It's an orange with a bold black scroll pattern. Our tails are 10 inches. All of our tails are 10 inches for this bow. A 13-inch loop. Bring it to the back and gather. Twist. Bring your pretty side to the top. You're going to measure out another 13-inch loop, and then you'll bring it to the back and gather and twist your pretty side to the top. When you're done making this part of the bow, you can add it to the bow dabra on top of the other and move on to your next ribbon. We're moving on to the third ribbon in our bow. It's another 2.5 inch, kind of a natural color with black stripes and a jack-o'-lantern pattern. This one we're going to do 10-inch tails and 12-inch loops. So measure out 12 inches, bring it to the back and gather, twist your pretty side to the top, then measure a 10-inch tail and cut your ribbon. Then you're going to add it to the top of the bow dabra just like you did the last ribbon. Our next ribbon is an orange 1.5 inch. It's got a chenille frayed edge on both sides of the ribbon. It's a very nice texture. We're measuring these loops out at 11 inches. Remember, our tails are 10 inches, but our loops are different sizes. So for this color, we're using 11-inch loops. And then add it to the bow dabra on top of the last. Now we're on the last ribbon in this bow. We're going to do 10-inch tails and 11-inch loops. So measure your 11 inches, bring it together and gather. Then measure out another 11 inches. Bring it to the back and gather. Then twist your pretty side to the top. Once this bow's made, we will add it to our bow dabra just like we did the last layers. And then take the time to straighten your loops and tails before you move on to the next step. Now you need to get a pipe cleaner or some floral wire. I chose pipe cleaner for this project. Lift your bow in the bow dabra just slightly from the bottom layer and run the pipe cleaner under all the layers. Cross your pipe cleaner stems and then cinch down on your bow as tight as you can. And as you're pulling up, grab it in the center between your thumb and forefinger and then work your pipe cleaner around to the back and then twist your bow to get the ultimate tightness. If you just twist your pipe cleaners, it doesn't get as tight. So hold your pipe cleaners and twist your bow. Then you're going to dovetail your ends, cut from your folded edge down to the tip. So fold your ribbon in half, and from your folded edge, cut downward to the end, and it creates a nice little V detail for your ribbon. And then you're going to add your bow to the top of your swag, run the pipe cleaners down through the mesh, and secure your bow to the frame. Now we're going to attach the Beware of the Pumpkin King sign. I'm taking pipe cleaners and running them through the mounting brackets and securing the pipe cleaner by wrapping the end around itself. And then we will use those pipe cleaners to attach the sign to the frame. You will place your sign where you want it, run the pipe cleaners down through the mesh, and secure the pipe cleaners onto your frame. You will need to repeat the same process of adding the pipe cleaners, and then you can secure this hand-painted wooden pumpkin to the top of your frame adjacent to your bow. The next thing we're going to do is take a 1.5 inch version of the solid stripe that we used in our big bow and 2 of the other 1.5 inches that we used in the bow, and we're going to swag them across our design. So put the 3 1.5 inch ribbon together and gather a little tail. Then up underneath the bow, locate a twist tie that you can tie this little tail into. It's under the bow, so it won't be noticeable. And just make sure you get a good tight twist to secure that tail in. Then you're going to bring it across and kind of swag it. I give a little bit of slack. Decide where it's going to hit a tie, and then I gather at that point. And as you notice, I've taken the ribbon and I've fanned them out so they're not laying on top of each other. They're kind of beside each other. Then you gather and you tie into the twist tie that you decided to tie it into. There is no method for how to do this swag. I just eyeballed and decided where it looked proper considering the placement of our jack and our pumpkin. Without cutting your ribbon from the rolls, gather the ribbon again, alternating the way you fan the pattern out. So the orange is next to jack on the top. So on this bottom, you want the stripe to be on the inner. Now there wasn't a twist tie that was exactly where I wanted this swag to hit in that location. So I added a pipe cleaner and I'm going to secure that end to the frame. And once it's secured to the frame, then you can cut your ribbon from the spools. And as I cut them from the spools, I go ahead and cut my dovetail into them. It just saves a step. Now we have to create the swags for the other side of this piece. So again, we gathered the 3 ribbon into a tail, and we're going back into the same tie that we secured the other side to, and laying these right in on top and twisting down. Make sure it's really tight so it holds them in. Then swag them just like you did on the other side. Now if you'll notice, we're going to do the opposite of what we did on the other side. So on the other side, I've got orange on the top next to jack. So on the side I'm working on now, we'll want to do the stripes. So whatever we did on the one side, we want to make it opposite on the side we're working on. So give yourself a little slack, decide how much slack looks proper to reach the next tie, then gather, lay it in your tie and twist the tie to secure the ribbon. And as we did on the other side, you will swag another section down to the bottom. And then you can cut your ribbon from the rolls when you have secured that into the bottom twist ties. Now we need to make the bow that we're going to place underneath jack. It's a little different and a little smaller than the big bow. We measured a 10-inch tail, but this time we're only doing 10-inch loops. So 10-inch tails, 10-inch loops. lay it into the bow dabra. Well, we're going to check placement first and size, as always, and then we lay it into our bow dabra if we like it. And we're going to add the other two 1.5 inch ribbons, the orange and the black, to the top of this bow. All are 10-inch loops and 10-inch tails. And then we will assemble this bow just like we did the first one. Once we have all the layers into the bow dabra, we will put our pipe cleaner in, secure it to our bow, then secure our bow to the frame right underneath Jack. Next, we get to add some pretties. I have 3 orange glitter sequined styrofoam pumpkins. To be able to secure them to the frame, I've taken my ice pick and poked a hole all the way through, then run a pipe cleaner through it. I do put a little bit of hot glue drizzled down into the hole. It just helps secure the pipe cleaner and keep it from rubbing back and forth inside the hole and boring the hole out. So then once it's dry, you can secure it to your frame. Just make sure that you're catching a crossbar so it doesn't fall off in transit. And we'll do this for all 3 pumpkins. We use the rule of odd numbers, so we're using 3 and we're placing them in a triangular pattern. The next piece we're going to add is this pick that has some ivory and black curlies on the end. Curly cues is what I call them. It has 3 branches on this one pick, so I cut it down into 3 individual pieces. And then I work with the curls on it, kind of spread them out and give them a little bit of life, because when you buy these picks, they're flat and compressed for shipping. So always spread your individual branches apart and give your piece a little bit of life before attaching it to your frame. So to attach it to the frame without using hot glue, we're going to make a little loop, actually a complete circle, in the wire at the bottom of your piece. And then you wrap, or you don't wrap actually, you put the tinsel tie through that hole and you twist off. And that's how you secure your stems, your embellishments to your wreath without using hot glue. I used 2 stems of this item, so that's 6 individual pieces that I was able to place randomly throughout the design. The last addition to this piece is going to be 3 pieces of this glittery, sparkly branch. Just adds another layer of dimension and texture to the piece. Building a good piece is all about layering. It was 1 stem and I was able to cut it down into 3 pieces to use for this design. Now that our jack is finished, he measures 36 inches high and between about 16.5 to 17 inches wide. He's a very large piece, extra large, and here he is. Isn't he just gorgeous? Thank you for watching. Follow me on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel below, like and share our video. You can find us on any social media at Halo Creative Designs.